What if faith was the only thing standing in between you and living your wildest dream life? Hey y'all, I'm Reese, and welcome to Making Meaning. Making Meaning is a podcast by the Cohere Collective that helps guide you along your path to making meaning in a way that makes sense for you. This week, I am joined by Coach Dennis Carlson. Dennis is also currently in school for his counseling degree, therapy degree, LPC. I'm unsure exactly which degree it is. I'll have to ask him and put it in the description down below. But he will also be a therapist here very shortly. In this episode, Dennis and I talk a lot about esoteric spiritual beliefs that we have in common. This is something that when I first met Dennis, obviously was a commonality that we shared, and I'm so excited to bring you this conversation. I think it's different from some of the things that we've discussed in Making Meaning in the past, but also really important to me and my personal belief system, and also something to explore for anyone who uses spirituality, religion, or metaphysics within their own worldview to make meaning. Of course, if you are interested in working with Dennis, all of his information will be in the description down below wherever you are accessing this episode. And if you love the Cohere Collective, love Making Meaning, please subscribe wherever you are watching or consuming this content. Leave us a like, leave us a rating, a review, a comment, or share this episode with someone that you think would really enjoy it. I believe that is all I have for y'all, so as always, let's take a deep breath. And get started. Dennis, thank you so very much for joining me today. We've been, I feel like, planning this for so long, and so to be able to actually sit down and be able to chat with some mics, I'm really excited. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, this is long deferred, I think, in terms of, but timing. There's no rush, there's no emergency, so the
Yes.
timing is always perfect. So it's lovely to be here, lovely to have an opportunity to try this. So
Yeah, absolutely. My very first question, just to hopefully put us in the right mindset for our conversation, is what is one thing you're grateful for right now?
I am incredibly grateful for this world. Honestly, I'm in such a place right now of peace and just calmness, and it's a beautiful feeling, and it's something that I haven't experienced necessarily all that much in my life. So to have that happen, I'm grateful for it. Like just to
Yeah.
walk in live more and more in the present is something that's such a gift, and I know it sounds trite, or it sounds like world peace or something as an answer, but it's true though, and that's the
Yeah.
funny part about it.
No, absolutely. And I think that there are a lot of things like that, sacred simplicity, these things that sound trite or offhanded, it's oftentimes are the things that feel the most powerful when we actually say them, when you sit down and really think about it. Why do you think that how would you kind of characterize this feeling of peace and calmness that you've been able to cultivate recently? I think that's always been a challenge for people, but especially in our current era where it feels like there are so many things being thrown at us on a daily basis, whether it be the media, the news cycle, our phones, right? I feel like we're constantly inundated with information that can be really scary. And then on top of that, we're trying to manage it, and we're being told how bad that is for our minds and brains. How have you been able to develop this sense of peace in this stage, in this context of our world?
A lot of self work is really the short answer, and that's never satisfying to people. But I think
There's
it
no
stems.
magic wand.
No, there is no magic wand in that. it really stems from a wholesale change in sort of my entire worldview, and that's something we can certainly talk about more. But for me, I firmly believe that what we what we imagine or what we think is true, what we believe is true, eventually becomes our reality. So in that
Yeah.
sense, we create our own reality. And it's been a long journey to get to this point, but it's been life changing for me, truly. And to the point where, I've completely changed my career. I've completely changed what I want to do. It's upended my life.
Yeah.
Um, I can't help but talk about it. It's probably my favorite thing in the world to talk about because it's the most consequential thing I can imagine, and
Yeah.
it's the thing that everybody's seeking, even if they don't know that they're seeking. And I was
Right.
for the longest time, and I don't want to pretend that I've found it by any stretch. There's always more to learn. There's always more to grow, but you reach these to use a video game metaphor, because it's something I love, and I think a lot of people get it, is you continue to level up.
Yeah.
And it's not a linear path. Everyone thinks there's a linear path to growth. Like, they want to see this nice arrow that points straight up to the sky. But the fact is that's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Nobody, that's not real life. And so you go through, and you're twisting and you're turning and you're wondering, why did this happen? But as you continue to just persist, you see more and more things become revealed. And I think that would be, if there was a word I wanted to capture sort of the gratefulness you mentioned earlier, it's this gratefulness for the unfolding that is occurring in my life. And to me, the word unfolding is so important,
Yeah.
because my whole life, I don't know about other listeners and other people, but my whole life, I have been a control freak, in terms of, and I pretend I wasn't. And that's the really cool part about our brain. It's so good at making us not really realize what we're actually thinking.
Yeah.
The deep processes, it's like those memes on the internet, like the iceberg, like really, we think we have a thought, but it's really the thought that's driving that thought is way down below.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm just so grateful, for this new way of looking at things, for being able to, but it comes with challenges as well. It's not an easy path. It reminds me, and it just reminds me of something. Phil Mickelson, who's a famous golfer, and I used to play golf and still like golf, but he said that, everyone wants to hit shots like me, but no one wants to do the work to actually play like I do. Like, you don't, yeah, you see me hit this nice shot, but you didn't see the 8 hours I spent from 6 a.m. to
Yeah.
2 p.m. hitting golf balls and
Well,
practicing.
and I think that it's so much easier for people to understand that concept when it is applied to something physical like a sport, or that just feels so much more tangible, right? When you see direct results like your golf swing improving, or going to the gym and you're seeing results and that your clothes start to fit differently, you feel a little bit different. But when it comes to the thing of self-work, and it's, well, everyone wants to, perhaps some of us have this idea of like, well, everyone wants to feel the way I do, or there is this, how are you so happy? How do you achieve this? Like, even in the question that I asked, right? And it's, well, we all kind of want that, but the work of that isn't as obvious or as tangible as the work of these other things, but it is in that work. It is in the day in, day out choice of exactly what you're talking about, changing your worldview, doing that self-work, and the energy of that. And I think that this actually takes us perfectly into my next question that I always like to ask, because I think everyone has a story to tell, and it gets at the heart of so much that this podcast is really about. But what is your story? How have you gotten to this point in your life? What was it like when that worldview changed? Whatever you feel called to speak to within your story, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely, Reese. And I do want to highlight a word you said that is something that I love and probably will touch upon later, and that is this idea of choice. That my belief is that we may not be able to choose the exact circumstances we find ourselves, but we can choose the meaning that we attach to these circumstances. And
Yes.
in fact, and I know we'll get more into that, but let me, to answer your question and really give the listeners maybe some background. I'll be honest, I'm a weirdo. I freely say that, and it's like that Billy Joel song. It just may be a lunatic you're looking for, because I may be crazy. I freely admit that. But and I'm not for everybody, and that's great. And that's one of the benefits of the work that I've done, the self-work that I've done, is that you no longer seek for things as much outside yourself, because you realize you are whole and complete. And that, if I had one message, it's you're perfect the way you are. You're beautiful the way you are. You are everything just the way you are. You don't need to change. Now, you might need to reveal certain things, but for me, I'm nearly a half century old, which I hate to say, but I'm going to be starting to age or I am aging like Benjamin Button in my own mind, at least. So we're counting backwards, starting soon. And I grew up in a single. I was a single. My mom was a single mom, but I grew up, in a home that was loving, but also, in some senses, emotionally neglectful. And let me take a step back. I think it's important. The number one thing that people, or that I'd like to say is I'm actually neurodivergent. I have both ADHD and am on the autism spectrum, and very high functioning. And people might say, "Oh, you don't seem autistic." I get that a lot. I don't know. I have trouble believing that. And so that realization was a huge turning point for me. But I grew up in a very religious, very Christian, evangelical Christian household. And that really sort of formed a lot, really formed everything about me in truth. And you talk about identity. And I think that for the vast majority of my life, if you asked my number one identity marker would have been my Christianity, would have been this almost cult-like. We believed very very deep things. They were very cult-like in some senses. It was very much leadership knows everything. They're essentially the mouth of God. This idea of the Bible is the literal word of God. That yes, maybe people wrote it, but this was every word in there is God's word. And I will say it's something I didn't realize, but being neurodivergent, I didn't feel things the way other people felt them in the church. So I would go to these long church services, which number one is a nightmare for any kid. Now put a kid who has ADHD and doesn't really understand what's going on, but who's also very, very bright. And that's the other thing. I was considered highly gifted, which frankly I think is a damaging label. I think all labels are damaging, but that in and of itself was a thing, and you kind of combine this perfect storm, and it left me as somebody who wanted to seek things, but questioning anything around God or Christianity or Jesus or any of that just wasn't allowed in my life. There were certain bright lines that I had in my childhood, and it was like everything was fine until you touch that landmine. And and you think about that. That just trains you not to feel comfortable asking questions. And so for 40 plus years, I didn't question anything, even the things that cognitively I knew didn't make sense to me. And so I, growing up as someone who was neurodivergent before that was really considered a thing, I was diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age, which my mother wanted to just felt it was better to pray the ADHD away and not give me red dye number 5. Was her two conclusions as to how to treat my problems or the issues, the symptoms I had,
Right.
and so that was kind of a fact of my life. I never really thought much of it. I didn't realize how big of an impact this neurodivergence had on my life, and spent 20 plus years in corporate America without, and just always was successful, which is kind of, and as I've come to find out, and after I got diagnosed and started to lean more into others like me and their experiences and just opening up to that and allowing those experiences in, I realized I was very blessed in my career. I continued to rise. I always made the right moves at the right time, and even in this though, there was always been an unfolding, in that it was never, I never once had to look for a job. Like the jobs always just came to me, and literally jobs in different areas. I started as a wonderful autist who loved numbers and loved data, was a data scientist, went to grad school at Cornell for statistics, only to find out that I really hated higher level mathematical proofs. And I couldn't pretend otherwise. So ended up leaving that, going to corporate America and played the game. And again, I didn't really understand how things work in corporate America, because I truly was, from a social perspective, had no real understanding of how things work, was very, very naive, and it's a very common thing. But for whatever reason, I was able to mask, what I call mask, very, very well. And no one would know, because I was generally able to hide it. My brain, I'm one of these people who's fortunate enough to have a very strong ability to mask and be other than, make people, be what people are supposed to be, whatever that means.
Right.
And that was always confusing. And about 5 years ago, I would say, is when everything sort of changed for me, when I hit a wall. And I'd hit this wall a few other times in my life that's probably not worth detailing, but college, it happened a couple of other times after the birth of my daughter. It just, but it's this idea of autistic burnout, and you reach a point where you just can't do it anymore. I can't, it's almost like if you've ever fallen asleep in bed with your arm underneath you, right? Your arm pinned underneath you. You wake up, and for that brief 20 seconds, right, your arm is completely numb. You're like, move, and it won't move. Like, and then eventually, you get the pins and needles, and it comes back online. Well, that's what it kind of felt like mentally. Like move, and it just, I couldn't get it to move. I couldn't do things anymore. And I started to go to therapy at that point, for really the first real time in my life, and just the very act of talking really helped. And I decided, literally kind of on a dime, to become to change my entire life. I was so sick of corporate America. And I think a lot of people out there can, and I don't want to get off on a rant, because I absolutely could, with all of it. But I just decided this wasn't for me anymore. I needed a change, and went back to school to get my master's degree in professional counseling, with the idea that I wanted to spend the rest of my life being a helper and really letting out what was inside of me, to help other people. And I really had no idea what that entailed, and no idea what that looked like, and so just decided to enroll and went through the graduate program. I actually graduate fully in May, which is exciting. It's been a 5-year journey, so I'm on the slow boat there. But again, everything unfolds the way it should. And I could tell you so many stories about how perfect it was. And then one of the things is, I've had a lot of training. I've had I'm in the position where, particularly what maybe a typical new mental health worker or advocate might not have the opportunity to is to take some training that costs money. That somebody who's starting out. I mean, most of my cohorts are in their late 20s. Probably many are fresh out of they went directly from undergrad to graduate, and so I'm kind of the old guy at the club as far as my class goes, and there's just this desire to just give back, and in whatever way I can. And so I sort of dove into this, and I love what I do, and really want to. And what I found is that I find it very difficult. While I can separate out sort of the therapeutic, if you will, and from a scientific perspective, what I really enjoy and what I really love is more of an integrated view, because my spirituality, my practice, the how I view things is so important to what I really feel the truth is.
Right.
And so there is this inner conflict sometimes of how do I how does that play out, and that's still candidly something I'm figuring out, and I think that we'll see where I don't worry about exactly what that's going to look like, because
Sure.
it is about unfolding, and it's about growth and understanding who I'm meant to be. But in the course of this, I took this training for something called internal family systems, which if you're listening, it's a beautiful, beautiful way of exploring yourself, and it's a very gentle way, and it's a very lovely way to look at who you are, and love and appreciate every single part of you, the good parts.
Yes.
And I put good in quotation marks, because first of
Right.
all, there's no good parts and there's no bad parts. All parts of us are valid. All parts of us are lovely, and all parts of us love us so desperately. And they do everything they can to take care of us. And so internal family systems, you can very easily look for it online. It's quite kind of popular now. But I was blessed to take a training with the Institute, and so I love to use that in my work with people. And it's just a modality. But it's just such a beautiful way to get to know yourself and love yourself more. And it's really helped me in my walk as well. But in the course of this training and going through this, which was very experiential in addition to didactical, it's not just
Right.
about book knowledge. It really is experiential. But that they had these affinity groups where you smaller, the training had 36 people, but you could break out into different groups based on your interests, and things like trauma therapists, or there was some for various religions, if you were for religious practitioners and things like that, and one of them was for neurodivergent individuals, and I had never considered myself at that point neurodivergent. I never even thought about what that meant, and none of the other sort of affinity groups spoke to me. There was no affinity, if you will. So I decided to try that, and I have to tell you, and I'm hoping I don't get emotional here, but it really is genuine. For the first time in my life, genuinely, I can say I felt accepted and seen on a level that I'd never experienced before in 40 plus years of my life, and it was just this idea of I'm valid. That the way I am is I'm not broken. I don't need to change. I don't need to. This is who I am, and it's beautiful, and it's okay, and it's and even more importantly is to thank those parts of me that have done such a good job in masking. So and because that's something that's interesting too. Like we all of these parts they're a part of us, and you can say, what are they? Are they real? Do they exist? How many angels dance on the head of a pin? You can always go there.
Right.
To me, they are real in the sense that they're energy, they're thought patterns, they're neurons firing in a certain pattern, and they exist. What does it mean to exist anyway? We could go on and on, but
Right.
But then the biggest thing is so I recognize this neurodivergence in myself, this particularly ADHD, and one day my daughter was like, "Hey, Dad, you should take this quiz," and not quite a BuzzFeed quiz, but this sort of a quick little 20 question, might you be on the spectrum essentially,
Right.
and so I took it, And we were kind of joking about it, and I took it, and I mean, basically the answer was, to paraphrase, was like, yeah, you're pretty likely to be autistic. You should probably get that checked out. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
little blithe there, but that was the take home.
Yeah.
And at first it was a joke, and you go through a lot in processing that in some senses,
Right.
particularly because when I was growing up, autistic was Rain Man, right? I mean, it was non-functioning, like that's and furthermore, my mother used to work with autistic kids. That was part of her career trajectory, and I think she would have never allowed me to be diagnosed anyway because of the connotation in
Right.
her mind, and it's not even clear. I mean, things have changed so much in terms of
Yeah.
how how um, how folks can be helpful to those of us
Yes.
on the
Right.
spectrum, and what works, and for the longest time it was as well, learn to be normal, and
Yeah.
you know
Whatever that is or
whatever that
looks
means.
like, or yeah.
And that was the lesson I got for 45 years, Reese. It was
Yeah.
learn to be, and I did it really well. I mean, I can pass for normal. I'm great at it, but there's a real psychological cost, as I found out. And so
Yeah.
that's sort of the last leg of my journey, which, I was officially diagnosed last year. So, first quarter of 2024. Um, and really in that time, I've learned so much about myself. It's opened so many doors for me
Mm.
personally. And it's also opened my eyes to the struggles of my community, or who I view as
Right.
part, in some way, my tribe, and I
Yeah.
very strongly identify as neurodivergent, and I'm still exploring what that means. But part of my passion is really to help other folks like me on
Hmm.
this journey. And so that's one of my passions, not my only passion, and I know we'll talk more about other things, but I kind of view them all sort of um, under an umbrella of learning who you are, and learning your power. Whether
Yes.
whether it's leaning into and accepting who you are because you're neurodivergent, or who you are because of hurts that you've had, the baggage you had from childhood, shadow parts. I'm a big believer in the exploration of the shadow side,
Mm.
and sort of from a Jungian perspective. Philosophically, I love exploring, because again, I come at it from there's it's so important to just exalt in who we are, and
Mm.
just be, and
Yeah.
what would it be like to take all of you, every part of you, the parts that you've never told anybody because you judge yourself for. What would it be like to just accept it?
Right.
Not love it, not hate it, not judge it, just acknowledge it and say, there's a part of me that feels this way. Let's explore it. What does
Right.
it mean?
Just breathe into
Yeah.
that truth. And I think one of the things that we well, I don't know, because was a lot when we first started chatting that it was like, wow, we really share a very similar worldview and a lot of shared experiences. But one of the first things that I think really opened my mind to the way in which we were similar was this idea of the divine I am. And that has long been something that I have held to be true. Both of us being raised in evangelical Christianity and having deep, intimate familiarity with the Bible and the language of it. One of the things that's been really healing for me, and I know you've shared a little bit about it too, is finding how these traditions and these practices in the Bible and in traditional Christianity can be a way for me to actually identify and define what my own divine spiritual practice looks like for me, and using that in a way to uplift my spirituality, as opposed to how those previously in my life felt kind of maligned to not let me be this full divine version of myself. But I think that this divine I am is exactly what you're getting at, in that in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was I am. And if that is true, like capital T true, what does that mean for us when we say and understand I am. The verb to be, am. And it is also me. It is I. Just the power behind the language of that. And like you're saying, the philosophy, the psychology of the integrating all pieces and parts of self into that is so, it's like that's the journey. That's the work, is continuing to let these pieces of self unfold exactly as you're saying. And so I just think your story is so emblematic of what that looks like, and kind of being given certain labels at a very young age that can be very harmful, but also helpful in some ways, depending on what the label is and how you engage with it. And being able to say, no, I don't identify with this label, or actually this label is extremely important and beneficial to how I conceptualize myself and the people that I can help. And letting that just be this journey of your I amness, right, throughout the whole thing. So thank you so much for sharing your beautiful and vast story. And I actually do quickly want to go back to the very beginning, and this idea of questioning that you felt kind of suppressed. And I think a lot of us experience this in many different church atmospheres, many different religious atmospheres, but our experience happens to be with Christianity. And I felt very similarly. And as a deeply curious person and someone who wants to understand why, it really causes you to hold the stress of this cognitive dissonance when things don't make sense and you're also not allowed to question. And I think that that can be really deeply harmful on the psyche. So I would just like to know what you think about how that changed, like holding this cognitive dissonance, how that has changed the way you grew up and the way you think about understanding and questioning now. And also why you think you were drawn to being a questioner, a curious person, even as a young person.
Wow, yeah. That's, we could go all day on all of that. I do, I want to first just acknowledge sort of I hope we can talk more about the I am, and because
Yes.
we do share that, and to me that's the thing I want to talk about. That's the most important thing, because once you know that, it's the master. I hate the word secret. Like there's some,
Right.
occult, esoteric, all of these things, unveiling, apocalypse, all of these words is this idea of unveiling,
Yeah.
and it's all there.
We already
It's
know
just,
it.
it's already there.
Yeah.
We say it every day. I am Dennis. I am Reese. I am whomever. And, but we don't really think about what it means,
Right.
and so that's really the crux of everything I want to do. But yeah, I don't know how I was so blessed to become a curious person. I always was curious, and this not asking questions, you don't want people to ask questions when you're scared what the answers are. I mean, that's really if you're scared of the questions, it means you don't have an answer, and that's
Yeah.
and that's what I've come to realize about my mother, and it's true today, I think, for sadly a lot of Christianity. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't believe any of this is a historical fact. I don't believe Moses existed. I don't believe that the events chronicled in Exodus ever happened. I don't believe that there was a Garden of Eden and that there was cherubim and seraphim guarding it, and that there was Adam and Eve. And I reject the concept of you can do all of that and still love the Bible and still believe that it holds wisdom and explore it. And that is one thing I do love about the Jewish tradition, and is this idea of let's spend a lifetime exploring 5 verses and really just trying to, that to me is deep understanding. And now my ADHD would never let that happen. Nor would I want that, but I love it. I mean, to me, that is so lovely. And I think talking about these things is the most interesting thing we can be doing. We
Yeah.
talk about the weather like that. Oh, it's cold out here today. Oh, did you get snow? Like, that's uninteresting. I want to know how are you? What are you? What are you today?
Well,
What are
and
you being? Who are you being?
when you ask someone, this was my New Year's resolution a few years ago, and it's one that actually has stuck with me. Not that I think every year, resolutions, intentions, manifestations that I develop for the year, whatever language we want to couch it in, they tend to kind of grow and evolve as I grow and evolve throughout the years. But this is one that has consistently been really important. When I ask someone, how are you? To mean it and say it with the intention of, how are you? And to kind of settle into that and bring that energy to it. So I completely agree. I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. Like, it's funny as someone who is neurodivergent, just being asked how are you is such a strange question, and I think
Right.
that what I'll call not neurotypical individuals, and again we can argue, is anybody neurotypical? What does that even mean? Blah blah blah.
True.
And listen, I don't ever mean to give offense to anyone. I there's no. Sometimes we can get hung up on language and things, but
Yeah.
and sometimes it is important. But my view is that when you ask, I don't know how to answer the question. How are you?
Yeah.
Well, what answer do you? No, of course, my masking part, my brain tells me how to answer that question. Depending on the person, could be his life, still upright and breathe. I mean, there's 100 different answers, but no one ever really. There's very few people who actually ask that question and genuinely mean
Right.
it, and that's okay. You don't need many people to, because frankly, it's exhausting to answer it.
Yeah.
If you're really, much
If
easier
you're
to say,
really doing it.
if you're really doing
Yeah.
it, it takes some courage to answer that question. Maybe we should
Well,
ask
and
ourselves that
time.
question.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and like, how much time do you actually have to answer when we say it so flippantly, right? And I think I mean, it even goes back to what we were saying about the I am, and that these are phrases that we say so flippantly. And at the very beginning, when even you said, I'm grateful for just this world, like these things that we can say that just roll off the tongue, that we don't even realize the magic that is imbued in our daily living, that it's, in my mind, I'm like, we're casting spells constantly. We are saying prayers to the divine constantly. And when we bring our awareness to that reality, it completely changes the way you engage with it. Hello everyone, it's Reese back, interrupting my wonderful conversation with Dennis just to remind you to please subscribe, like, follow, rate, review the Cohere Collective. That really, really is the best way to support this work, and I would love to have you become a member of the collective for free, wherever you are listening or watching. Okay, back to our conversation. Makes me think of the Buddhist proverb, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. I still say, how are you, to the grocery store clerk, to the person at the phone store that I went to today. And, you still have to do these mundane things, but being able to approach that with, how are you? And even if it doesn't necessarily hit the other person in the way that I am trying to show up in the world, in this space, it still changes my engagement with those around me, with the world around me.
Yeah,
and I think
totally.
that I was having a conversation last night about how in the Buddhist Eightfold Path, there's a lot of discussion around attachment, how most of our suffering comes from attachment. And we tend to think of attachment to these worldly, materialist things. But I think there's also a lot of attachment to identity and to the things that we want to be or that we say we are. And when you let go of that, who is there? Who is that I am?
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And this idea of, one of the things I tell the folks, my clients, is an exercise I love to do, is you're not your thoughts.
Yeah.
And so many times we have a thought and we think we assume that somehow that thought is true. But if you stop it and you ask yourself the question, a very simple question, is this thought useful? Like why you can choose, people say they can't choose what they think. And I disagree with that gently. It may take time, it may be challenging, and it requires attention and focus and work. And in the same way, it requires, if you want to bench press 500 pounds, you better get cracking in the gym. You're not just going to go one day and do it. But every day you're going to get a little bit better at noticing it and noticing it and noticing it. What am I thinking? Because again, I believe your imagination, what you believe to be true, what you assume to be true, becomes true. And I think it's a law. And I saw it in practice as a evangelical, spirit, filled, tongue talking Christian who saw miracles. I mean, can I say, have I ever seen something like a limb grow or, somebody raised from the dead or anything like that? And the answer is no. I mean, I watch a lot of channels like apologetic kind of atheist, debate channels and things like that. And at the end of the day, I don't feel the need to, I'm not trying to proselytize. I don't need to evangelize my worldview, because my view is he that has ears to hear, or she that has ears to hear, will hear. And those are the people I want to work. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'd love for you to believe what I believe, because I think it's life changing. And I think, and it's, I learned this from the Bible. And that's why it was so hard for me when I was deconstructing my faith and deconstructing Christianity. I just couldn't let go of the Bible. Because it was such a big part of my life for so long. And, and it's something I still love. I still refer to the Bible, daily. I mean, it's a part of my life. It's a part of me. But I see it in a very different light. It's allegorical to me. And that makes it more powerful in some senses, because, and I also can hold space for the fact that, I'm making my interpretation. This may not be the interpretation that was originally intended. And I hold space for that. And that's true, but it's always what it means to me. What meaning do I take from this? So for me, I saw this principle in action, and really it's based on, a very simple premise in the Gospel of Mark, and it's in a few other Gospels, and it's something that, I mean, literally is probably my favorite verse in the Bible, but Jesus it's in Mark chapter 11 and verses 22 through 25, and to paraphrase, Jesus and his disciples are walking into the temple, into Jerusalem, and he sees he sees a fig tree, and the fig tree doesn't have any fruit on it. And so he curses the fig tree. He says, no man, die tree, no one's ever going to eat fruit from you again, right? And then he walks away, and ostensibly, presumably, he walks away, the tree's still standing there. And they go into Jerusalem, hang out there, come back the next day. They, same road going out as they came in. And now the tree's dead. It's all withered away and desiccated. And of course, Peter, I think it is, but one of the disciples points out, says, Lord, the tree you cursed, it's withered. Look, and Jesus says, have faith in God, or another way to read that is have the faith of God. Actually, it's not clear what that. You can choose to interpret that in multiple ways. But then he says, it basically says, without quoting everything, feel free to go look it up. But he says that whatever you want, believe that you have it, and you will. That to me is powerful, and has nothing to do with being a Christian. It has nothing to do with religion or anything else. It basically, Jesus says, believe that whatever you want, doesn't judge what you want, Not that it's good or bad. It doesn't say whatever you want if it's really nice and it's going to help other people and
Right.
it's going to make other people feel good. And, I approve. You get me to check off and sign in triplicate that I approve this message. I'm Jesus Christ and I approve this message.
Right.
Um, no, that's not what it is. And so I'm weird. I believe that is true.
And so to
And
me, I'm like, not weird. Actually, like you said, extremely powerful, life changing. And I think the faith piece of that is so important. And as any Christian will tell you, faith as small as a mustard seed is still so powerful, and it does come in belief. And what is faith? Faith is believing without seeing. And I think believing in these patterns before you can start to recognize them is extremely daunting, and it feels impossible. But actually, I think a lot of Christianity has turned away from, I think, our probably shared engagement with the Bible that is this maybe secondary layer of allegory and metaphor and manifestation, and that is actually embedded within the text if we dare to look there for it. Why do you think it is that we have the religion based in this text actually vilifies and villainizes a lot of people who believe this? And even I'll go so far as to, in my own practice, I identify as a witch. I think that is an extremely powerful label, identity that I have an attachment to for me. And that is something along with like witchcraft and magic. I had friends growing up who couldn't watch Harry Potter because it was of the devil, right? How has this been not misinterpreted, but kind of just like missed, right? And not in a, they're not reading it, but in a, there's a different appreciation for what those verses mean. How have we gotten, I'm having trouble framing this question, but I think you understand what I'm saying. I'd love to hear more about what you think.
yeah, I think it's all defense mechanisms, really, is in some senses. Like, and let me explain what I mean. Let me
Sure.
unravel that a little bit because I'm kind of thinking about it as we go here. So
Right.
flying and building the plane here to some degree.
Yeah.
But the thing is if you accept the premise that what I just that verse is true, that
Right.
and by the way, it's not cherry picking one verse of the Bible. I could give you 20 right now
Right.
that all say the same thing in different ways about faith and what have the God kind of faith, and who God who quickeneth the dead and calleth those things that are not as though they are. I mean, it is. And what did Abraham do? He did exactly that same thing. It's
Yeah.
littered. So that's number one. It's I think there's a fear of failure somehow, and if this is true, then I have a responsibility. Like I can no
Yeah.
longer blame, and that's something that I until you are willing to stop blaming yourself or other people and remove the blame label and just accept things as they are and see what can I do to change this if this is true. So if
Right.
my imagination creates reality, if my intention, another way of thinking is intended, what I intend, if that in fact, in some fashion that I can't explain and I have no scientific basis for it, and as somebody who was a hard data scientist, I love data, but it that takes a lot of responsibility because now all of a sudden, and it can it can swing in the opposite direction too, because oh, I
Right.
did something wrong, and I think we saw that a lot in the early 2000s and with The Secret and this idea of the law of attraction, and I need to be at
Yeah.
high vibes all the time, and this that and the other thing, and there's definitely there's truth in that in the same way there's truth in a lot of things in terms of how I see the world working, but it's it's not it's not the full truth. It's what you believe in your heart. It's not what you do outwardly. It's what you can't fool yourself. Like, that's the thing, because you are
Right.
God. And we've talked about this. Really, that's how I view things, that we are literally each and every one of us. So it's just, we're here on this lovely podcast and talking, but it's really just God talking with himself. It's just
Yeah.
you and I are just talking with ourselves, and we're all, and when you can start to see people that way, it changes how you see behavior. It changes how you react, because that is the only thing you can change. But I think
Right.
people are scared. I mean, my experiences is people are afraid to truly believe, because what if it
Mm.
doesn't work? And then
Yeah.
does that change? Then you have to examine, well, what about God? And that was one thing that always bothered me as a Christian, and somebody who really was trying to understand how this worked, because I don't I don't I don't love the idea of, well, this magical thing happens, and I want to know more. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
understand it, and I don't need to know, like, okay, how does it happen? Like, literally, okay, I pull this lever. This is how the schematic, the blueprint. But
Right.
there has to be, there's a causal thing. Something causes something to happen. And I've seen it work too many times. I had seen it work too many times in my life as a through prayer and believing, and
Right.
faith in God, that I couldn't just dismiss it as, oh, that was my, and sort of, imagine it away and say, no, that didn't happen, because it was a real part of my experience.
Yeah.
But the thing is when it didn't work, I was always confused as to why not. I prayed for something, I didn't get it, and then people would put this idea, well, maybe it wasn't God's will. Like,
Yeah.
it's like the ultimate defense mechanism. Well, I didn't get it. Well, why
Yeah.
didn't you get it? Well, God didn't want me to have it. It wasn't meant to be mine. Clearly, and honestly, and I abhor that kind of language. I abhor that
Yeah.
kind of thinking, because I fundamentally believe that if you have a desire, and I'm talking a real, not, oh, it'd be nice to have a new BMW. Although that's fine, and if you want a new BMW, you should have a new BMW.
You're
I think
allowed.
you're
Yeah.
allowed. You should. I mean,
Yeah.
good. Take it. It's yours. I mean, it's yours. It's already allotted to you. But just the very fact that you have something that's a longing of your heart, that's a burning desire, that thing that keeps you up at night, that no matter what, you try to live your life, you try to move on, and you pretend you move on. And maybe you do kind of move on, but it's still there. It's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
grain of sand that you've put a coating over, and it's become a pearl, and that's beautiful. But the good news I have to tell people who are listening is, whatever, it's meant to be yours. Like,
Yeah.
if you desire it, if it's that level where it consumes you, it's a burning passion, desire, whatever it is, you are meant to have it, because
Hmm.
I almost reverse cause and effect. I love these mental
Right.
ideas of it. Like,
Yes.
we think time is linear. Well, and I'm by no means a quantum physicist or really understand
Right.
that. I'm smart enough to pretend like so I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But the fact is time, it doesn't really exist in any appreciable, the brain, to us, really, time doesn't exist. Like, all we have is now. Like,
Yes.
we what is the difference between a past memory and something you imagine? It's the same
Absolutely
substance.
nothing.
It's the same
We
substance.
actually know for a fact that the same, like psychologically, neurologically, the same section of the brain that fires when we are like remembering something is the same section of the brain of imagination and creativity. And when we remember something, we are only remembering the last time we remembered it, not the event itself. There is no way to prove that anything has actually happened to us except our current experience of a past thing, which is wild to think about. And I think that I am just so in alignment with everything you've said, and this idea of it is already yours, because why else would you have this embedded so deep within you if it was not your nature? If it was not already encoded in your DNA, in your soul, in your chi, there's all of these different words for that. But what is that? And I think that, there is this idea within the religious communities that to me, having been raised with that language, it is God to me, right? That it is the peace of God that I am, and when I step into that presence, it is stepping into my God self. And I really love the language of God because it feels so powerful. I also think a lot about how this, and like you said, not to proselytize or want to convince people of the truth, but I do think it's interesting to think about, because I do hold it to be true, that this can be true for people whether or not they believe in a God, whether or not they are religious, and the way in which our language may shift if we're thinking about this from an atheistic perspective, in that very much it's like, okay, let's call it your DNA, let's call it your genetics, let's talk about string theory, let's talk about the energy that we know thoughts have, let's talk about the actual wavelength of these things, because that's there too. And we know that we are no more solid than the air is, than the tables are, and yet we're having these thoughts. So like, even from that scientific perspective, I still think there is something so magical that, I think I'm going down a slightly different rabbit hole because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, that I'm like, I think it's true, like atheism and theism are kind of the same thing at the end of the day, because it's a belief in something you cannot see. And what is it but energetics? It's energetics and faith. And Arthur C. Clarke he has 3 principles, I want to say, of science. And one that I just think is so beautiful is, oh my goodness, it is leaving my mind, but it is something about how, any sufficient science will be indistinguishable from magic.
From magic. Yeah, I thought that's where you might
And
be
it's
going.
it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's exactly that, right? That these are one in the same. And to say I am God feels deeply self-centered and conceited, and also the word is for this is escaping me too. My brain is not firing on all cylinders, but antithetical to the idea of believing in a God, right? If you say that to a Christian, they're like, "You're crazy pants. Who do you think you are? You are not God." But to me, it is deeply, deeply spiritual to say, "No, I believe that I am God, and so are you, and so are we all."
Well, we're taught that. I
Yeah.
mean, in Christianity in particular, but it's. I mean, pride goes before a fall.
Yeah.
And a haughty spirit before destruction. I have that one,
haughty
memorized.
spirit. Yeah.
My mother would say it to me constantly. But I mean, it's this idea, again, that we're down here and God's up here, and the funny part is if Christians actually read the works of Paul, he makes like 100 references to the idea that Christ is in you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if somebody's in me, like, what does that mean? Then but they'll take everything else. I mean, they'll go crazy over, oh, a man lying with a man is an abomination, which is a very literal reading of something that was written thousands of years ago that has changed dramatically because of culture and context and all of this other stuff. They'll die on that hill,
Yeah.
but and use it as a sword to bludgeon, others.
Yeah.
But you say something like, "Hey, Jesus is in me." Like, Jesus. If Jesus is in me, then I'm in Jesus. Like, you can't have it one way. You can't have it both ways, or you can't have it one way and not the other.
Right.
And so I mean, I just find it funny. And again, I don't ever want to be. I don't want to be looked at or thought of as like dunking on Christianity or anything, because I have a reverence for it. It's just, though, I think for 98% of the Christians that I have grown up with and know and love and think are incredible, wonderful, lovely people, would have a real difficult time, if not more. Even to say it, even for them to say it, I think I'm curious, but a lot of people are. What comes up for you when you say, "I am God"? I am God, and really mean it. I am God. Like, I am the invisible, formless, faceless substance of all things. Not me, not the flesh suit. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I really like to view myself as a player. I'm just a
Yeah.
player on this stage. But the thing is I'm the writer, the director, the author, and the producer all in one. And that's a beautiful thing. And it's a responsible thing.
It is so responsible. It's deeply poetic. It's deeply Shakespearean. And I mean, all the world's a stage and men and women merely players, right? And I love that it says men and women merely player, not and we are merely players, right? Because it actually separates your earthly identity that, like, I am a woman, and even though, like, I identify very strongly with being a woman, and that's a part of my identity that has given me great community and strength, but even that, the idea of gender and name and selfhood is something that is flesh suit, right? These things, as opposed to what is the thing that exists that is not the player, that is not the actor. And I think that even it is so interesting to think about this in context of neurodiversity and in the idea of masking. And I think that masking is something, even for people who maybe aren't neurodivergent, can really relate to. We all know what it feels like to be in a place and not be fully ourselves, be the version of ourselves that we know this space calls for. And that is deeply masking. And I think it's so interesting to think of it within this idea of a stage, and that like ancient acting was mask work. And I could go on a rant about mask work for years because it's beautiful and gets you so in touch with what's behind the mask, and it's really, really interesting. But just the ways that we see these crossovers culturally in this thing, it's like the truth is there within everything. Like, everything holds that. And I actually, there's a quote that I have sitting right here. The truth is in all things, and all things are the truth. And it's that. Right? So within all of this, what now? How do we, because I think one thing that your story also touches on that for me is kind of the work, is bridging the gap between flesh suit existence and knowing this reality, and also wanting to make a difference and wanting to make an impact and believing in the purpose of this work and of being here. How do we bridge that gap? How do we embody our I am every day while still knowing that we are puppeting something that is so impermanent, and that, yes, much of this life feels, it's almost like a deeply nihilistic thing, that it's like, so it means nothing, but that actually, in the existentialist way, makes it mean everything. So how do you reckon with that, with this bridging of the gap between the kind of forever truth, the capital T truth and the lower T truth, that there is this deeper reality and then there is the reality of our lived day-to-day existence? How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, the true answer, the answer that immediately pops into my head, which I'll talk a little bit more about because I like to talk, but is just persistence. To me, the most critical, faith is persistence. I mean, persistence is really what it is. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, again, I guess I'll get biblical again, because that's just what I do. But we're here and we're sowing the word, right? I mean, we're talking about this. The information is being put out there, the word, if you will. And you actually started, I think, our conversation with this idea of, in the beginning was the word, or the logos, and the word was with God, and the word was God. This idea of the word. And what is the word? What is the logos? Well, that's I can almost think of it as our truth, as
Right.
a way of truth. And but once you take hold of this idea and you make the decision that, I'm going to believe this. What do you do? Well, to me, it's a day. It's Paul said that I die daily. To me, it is about this idea of dying. You have to die to your old self. Like you
Yeah.
have to die to all of the isms that you subscribe to. Um, and and that's lonely.
Yeah.
That's lonely.
It's a hard sell.
It's a hard and but again, Jesus called it the pearl of great price. Like a man found a pearl of great price buried in a field. He went and sold everything that he had so that he could buy the property to get that pearl. Well, the message I would say is you're the pearl, Reese. I'm the
Yeah.
pearl. Your listeners, every single one of you is the pearl, but you have to buy it, and it takes everything. There is no. That's just the truth of it. And those are the folks that I have dedicated. That's my mission, to work with folks who are literally like Cortez when he reached the New World. He burned his ships. If you're going to believe this, you're never a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant
Right.
or you're not pregnant. Like there is no, there's a lot of gray in the world, but there's no gray in being pregnant, and there's really no gray in this. Like either you believe it or you don't, and it's okay not to. But once you do, it it's a marvelous way of living. My
Yeah.
and the thing I would say is test it. Like that, and I mean that's really the second thing. This persistence. It's try it. Like if
Yeah.
something's true, it should be testable, in the sense of try it and see. So what do I mean? Well, take something you want, whatever it is, and see yourself as if watch yourself figure out something that allows you to feel as if you already had that thing that you wanted in your life.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if it was getting a good grade on a final, let's say that you're, I intern at a college, so I like to for things that are relevant to some of the folks that I've worked with, but see yourself ahead of time, getting whatever that would look like. Construct a scene or imagine something in your head that implies you've gotten whatever it is that you were looking to get. So,
Right.
how would you what would the person who got a 96 on the final look like? What would that feel like? What would you do? And would your friends congratulate you? Maybe that's how you do it. Maybe you script out a scene, but imagine you're writing the episode. Like I
Yeah.
love doing that, and this idea, and different people. There's a whole lot of stuff out there on what we're talking about here. I mean, you can go to YouTube,
Yes.
and there's a ton of things, and I mean, I'm interested in sharing what I know because it is so life changing, but there's not a dearth of information. I mean, there's 100 different ways, but what there is the connections missing. This is a really hard thing to do alone. It's not impossible. I mean, you don't need anyone else because you're
Right.
everything there is anyway. But having other selves, if you will,
Yeah.
is I mean that's the whole reason we're here. If you believe all of this, that source, God, the universe, whatever awareness wanted to experience things,
Yeah.
and so and what to me that's just a beautiful way of looking at things, and
Yeah.
but I encourage people to try it. Just
Well, and I think
try it.
even going back to what you said at the very beginning with like the sports metaphor and how practicing a sport can feel really tangible. One of my favorite ways that we know that this principle works on a really small scale is positive visualization. And that was something when I was younger and I was a highly competitive athlete and my volleyball serve was off for whatever reason, or I was like I was swinging or something was weird or this was a really important game and I really needed to perform well. car ride on the way over there, eyes closed, visualizing, what does my perfect serve look like? What does the Reese who serves perfectly every time feel like? The Reese who performs her best game, the Reese who is setting perfectly every single game. And this is what the best sports psychologists in the world will tell you to do. And obviously that feels very minimal, and there's a lot of different ways that I think you could come back at this and say, well, that's telling your brain these things and you're practicing it in your brain, and that allows your brain to fire the different neurons down. Like, it's not a spiritual thing. It's not a God thing. Well, let's extend the metaphor out further, right? To these other things of, well, what does the you that you want to be feel like living the life that you want to live? And when you play the way you practice, right? When you do those things mentally, going back again, that is both remembering it happen as well as imagining it happen in the future. And it is happening to you in that moment the same way things in the past happened to you. That is how your brain experiences it. And it does feel like a God thing in taking control of the ownership that you do have of your life. And I think one thing that's important to me within this conversation is to return back to what you said about choice, that you don't have control over the cards you are dealt. Because I think it's really easy to look at this conversation and it come across as very trite and even privileged in a lot of ways. And it is a privilege. It is a privilege to be able to be having this conversation, to believe this, and to walk in this truth for us. It is absolutely a privilege. But I think acknowledging that this isn't any sort of like you said, removing blame from things. I would just hate for this to come across as placing blame on people who get into horrible situations, that it's like, well, you did that to yourself. No, absolutely not, right? And there are all sorts of things that we can do to understand why spiritually and energetically and within the context of this framework that we're talking about, really hard, bad things happen to people all the time. But I think the most powerful and empowering piece of this is that no matter what that context looks like, you always have the choice to have faith, to believe.
You do. And that's, and you're right. I appreciate you saying that, Reese. I think it's important because I experienced this a lot growing up, from a Christian prayer faith perspective, but I think it applies here just the same. It's this idea that I wasn't good enough, or somehow I failed, or my faith wasn't strong enough, and I get where that comes from. That's a critic. That's this idea of but again, can you ask, is this useful? Is this, what is this who is asking this question? Is it because people they do this, they'll look up some technique, right? And again, it's just like the sower sows the word, right? So that parable, which was such an important parable, Jesus actually explained it. He didn't really explain many parables, but that was one he actually explained. And it is fundamental to how the world works. But what does he say? Well, a farmer goes out and scatters seeds, and some of it falls on hard ground, and the birds come and quickly eat it. So another more falls on like thorny ground, it calls, where it tries to grow but gets choked out, and that there the idea is the world comes and chokes things out, and so there's all these different ways that things can land with people, and it's very easy for us to sit here and I can imagine somebody saying, no, you don't understand. I've tried this, I've done this, and it doesn't work for me. And first of all, genuinely, my heart, I get it. Like I want, your hurt is real and deserves acknowledgement and not hiding. And that's what can happen sometimes. We push this down.
Right.
Like that is a real hurt, and that is a very real thing. And I still choose to believe that I'm going to get what it is that I want. And I can, and I acknowledge that, and I talk to that part of me, and I comfort that part of me, and I sit with that part of me, and I let that part of me know that they're loved, and I mean,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's about saying, it's about what are you going to choose to continue to believe, and the other problem is this is a very lonely journey often for people, I find, because it's very hard to find people to talk with about this. I think
Yeah.
you know this. Like, people will think you've lost it. Like, this, you're woo woo. You're into crystals and again, and not to listen. I think everything is permitted. Frankly,
Right.
you had mentioned earlier. I identify as a witch, and I love that. I think that's incredible. And we could talk. I'd love to do episodes with you on that specifically. Like, we could go all over there, and
Oh, yeah.
particularly from someone who came from a very Judeo-Christian perspective and very Abrahamic religion perspective. It's really interesting, sort of the perception of this concept of daemons or demons
Yes.
that literally get demonized, and again, I like to ask questions like, well, what if history is always written by the winner? So, what if everything, question everything, but question everything. But for those, whatever your situation is, even if you're about to be evicted tomorrow, and that's a terrible, terrible situation to be in, and I don't make any light of it. What meaning do you put on that? Do you make it mean that you're a failure and you can't do anything? Or do you believe, what do you want for your life? Get that. I mean, number one, know what you want. So many people don't know what they want. I mean, they want some nebulous, vague idea of happiness. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but they think all of these things outside of them are going to make them happy. Oh, if I get this, if I get this job, things will be better. If I make this much money, things will be better. If I get this person, my life will be different. Everything will be changed if I just have this person. And frankly, that's an awful lot of pressure to put on anybody. Number one, I wouldn't want anyone to put that on me.
No.
No, what I want, but wherever you are, you can always choose to believe that something good is going to happen and see it happen and embed yourself in it to the point where you are deluding yourself. People throw around the term gaslighting all the time. And I don't love that for a lot of reasons. I do think it certainly happens. But in a sense, the way it's used, that you're almost gaslighting yourself into, and again, this is biblical. You could look at the analogy. I mean, look at the story of Esau and Jacob. Esau was the firstborn. He came out first. Jacob came out second. The name Jacob means supplanter or trickster. And the whole story, Esau was supposed to get the blessing and get blessed by his father Isaac. He went, his father says, go bring me a meal. Go kill a game and bring me a beautiful stew, and I'm going to bless you. And Rebecca, the mother of the twins, heard this, tells her younger son, who she loved, Jacob, to go, go. I'm going to make you food. Go bring it to your dad and get the blessing. And he does. And and Isaac gives him this lovely blessing. All of these great things are going to happen. Esau comes back and is like, "Hey, Dad, here's your food." It's like, "Who are you?" I already gave the blessing. I can't give it back. Well, that's biblical. That this idea of being the supplanter, of deceiving. We're deceiving ourselves. It's all within us. This is all a play within us. I'm not asking, again, let's say you want the love of your life, somebody who, this is the person who makes your heart, beat, and you're convinced of this, and there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, you shouldn't want that. Like, you shouldn't want a specific person, or you shouldn't want a specific job. But no, instead, I just want to find my soulmate, a true, and both are right, by the way. But I think I believe you're allowed to choose what you want. Like that this is your reality, essentially. And so the question is, it's not just to fool yourself into saying that, oh, I'm in a relationship with so and so, that, because your brain is going to fight against that, right? But it's this idea that I'm not asking you to believe that you're in a relationship with so and so. I'm not asking you to believe that you have this job. Or I'm not asking you to believe whatever the situation is. What I'm asking you to believe is, can you believe that your belief in this is enough? that just by
Right.
believing that so it's almost extracting it to my mind a level, because your brain is
Yeah.
going to fight
Yes.
for many people. Like, oh, and this is why, like, okay, you want, you'll read online or hear online of oh, you'll grow taller. Like that's a big one. Like, oh,
Right.
I want to grow two
Yeah.
inches. And again, I'm not going to put a limit on that. If that's something that you want, that's a true heart's desire. I believe you can have it. But the question is can you believe it? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, can you
And
believe it?
I think also not being married, this is something that I think is really interesting too, is this almost be careful what you wish for. Because I think oftentimes we get married to the way that we expect something to happen. And if you are putting energy into growing taller, and like that is truly the thing that you want, all of us hear that and we think, okay, so what? Like, I'm gonna wake up one day with this belief and like I just barefoot on the ground am gonna be 2 inches magically taller? Like, how would that happen? I don't know if at a certain point, like how you could make that happen. What I do believe is that there are lots of shoes out there and soul inserts and things that you can do to give yourself this feeling of being taller. Energetically, how can you feel like you are 2 inches taller? Like, you don't know what the world might put in that pathway that is giving you the thing that you have been working for, that you have been putting your energy into, that you have been manifesting. It just may not be the way that you imagined it. And I think so often, so many of us are actively living our dreams, but we don't realize it because it is not the dream that you thought you were dreaming. And
I like that.
much...
I like that idea of living your dreams. I think and I agree completely, because again, I believe we're manifesting everything at all times. Like this world is the problem is for most people they don't do it consciously. So
Yes.
they're just dreaming. Like they're and I mean, again, a lot of poets and a lot of everything said that. But you're right. I mean, and people can get literal. And I want to grow too. I mean, so what would be the difference between me? I'm 6 foot tall, 6'1" ish. If everyone saw me as 6'4", even though I was only 6 foot tall, but literally everyone I came in contact, because I literally my whole life I've had people say, "Wow, how tall are you? 6'4"?" And it's like, no, I'm about 6'1", barely 6'1", but people saw me as 6'4". Now here's something really funny, and not even fun. So my whole life I grew up, my grandmother prayed that I would be over 6 feet tall. Like literally, my mother always, every day, this was her prayer because everyone in our family was short. My mother was 5'1". My grandmother was 5 foot. Even my grandfather, my father was 5'8". My grandfather was 5'10". Like there's nobody in our family who was above 5'10", really. And so she prayed, and I ended up at 6'1", 6'0" and 7/8 inches, if I want to be absolutely precise. But yet people see, and I don't know why I'm going off on this, but my point is that was intention. Now again, can I prove that? Oh, there's no experimental design here. Like I don't have access to the universe in which my grandmother did not pray for me to be 6 foot tall to see what happened. So, is this the hill I'm going to die on? Yes, I wouldn't have been. No, I don't know that, but does it matter? And furthermore, again, back to the question, if everyone says I'm 6'4", even though I'm 6'1", does that matter? And could I grow to 6'4"? Sure. I'm not willing to put the energy or effort to do that.
Yeah.
But I would never say no. That's the one thing I'll never say is that if you have a dream, I don't, do it. Like I will support you. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Like if that's I don't care. No dream is wrong. Even if it's an unlovely dream, that's the thing. Like, and that's what people want. A lot of people don't get what they really want because they think they don't deserve it. Or maybe they're ashamed that they want it in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think this idea that we don't deserve it is so pervasive. It truly is. And it is this one thing that I've noticed for myself in like wanting the podcast to be really successful, wanting Cohere to be successful, wanting to be fully self-employed. The thing that keeps me from having the level of success that I would like to have so often, at least recently I've just really been thinking about this is, why am I not holding myself to this schedule? Why am I not taking these certain risks? Why am I not being more invested? Why am I not spending more time? And in my mind, those are the things that it's like, well, I have to do these things. I have to pay my dues. I have to spend 20 hours a day. I have to be exhausted at the end of the day to deserve all of these things, right? And that's what I'm telling myself, is that even though I believe I'm awesome, I'm a great person, I'm meant to do this work, I believe in this work, I believe in myself, I am still telling myself I am not doing a good enough job of what I am meant to do to be worthy of it. And that is wild when you sit and break it down, right? That it's like, why are you not your front row? Why are you not your number one fan? Because you do deserve it. You already do. And why should anyone have to burn themselves out, have to do anything that is making you physically unhealthy or mentally unhealthy or emotionally unhealthy in order to get what you deserve? And I think that especially in the West, we have this idea of like, pay your dues and then you'll rise to the top and, do the whole thing. And it's like, and then what? You're happy? Like, because you've done these things? Like,
Yeah.
no, like, why are you not already worthy of that? Because you are. You are.
Yeah, you can't become worthy of something that you can't earn what's already yours.
Right.
That's just the fundamental idea of it. I read a story once about this old pensioner woman in like London or outside of London or whatever, who lived this incredibly meager existence. Tiny little house, barely getting by, and then she died one day, and it was found out that like she had like a multi-million-dollar estate bequeathed to her that she never found out about. So literally, here she was suffering the whole time, and living in poverty essentially, when all of this wealth was hers. And I love that, and I hate that for her, but I love that
Right.
analogy because I believe that is true for all of us. It's not a zero-sum game, and that's what we've been taught to believe. Like, it's not I succeed and you. In order for me to succeed, you fail. This isn't Squid Game, where there can be only one. There's plenty of people who I can work with. There's plenty of people who you can work with, and you will touch people in ways that I never could, and vice versa, because we're meant for certain. Our energy is meant for certain people. Our everything that went into us, that created us to who we are today, is really for other people. I mean, we're not here for ourselves. And I always heard that, and it was always like, well, I mean, why do we react ugly, unlovely, in unlovely ways, or why do we act in ways because of scarcity, because we're afraid, because we don't think we're going to have enough. I can't give that homeless person $10 because I can barely make rent, and they don't deserve it. And see what the mind does. All of these things, and my whole view is let's just throw that all out the window. Let's create I want to create a space where there is no judgment, that we can just be real and naked and true and see what happens in a safe like play like kids in life. I don't, to me, the only sin in the world is to have a fervent desire, a heart's longing, the yearning of your soul that you do not satisfy. That to me is my definition of sin. Because if you think about it, if I'm hungry, if I'm starving, my salvation is food. If I'm thirsty, my salvation is water. If I'm poor, my salvation, these are, that's Jesus, if you will. That's my Savior, is those things in that moment. And, again, I believe our belief is what creates those things in some way that I can't understand. In the same way, I don't understand how a A human, takes 9 months to come from a single cell to a living, fully formed human being. An elephant takes 11 months. A chicken takes 21 days. A chicken egg. Why? Why doesn't it take 28? It takes as long as it takes, and people grow weary. And the fact is the world, this reality is really being written as we go along. You talk about building the plane and flying the plane. I believe that, because if I believe anything, it's that it's all finished. Like there is no work to be done. And even again, people think God has to. Even Christians, they pray, they think God is going to do something.
Right.
It says
right.
It is finished. Like creation is finished. There's a verse that basically says Jesus put his feet up on the stool of the world. He made his enemies his footstool.
On the seventh day he rested. It's like,
exactly.
They've been resting.
It's this idea of peace. When you are finally convinced, and this is what's so hard about it, because there's no formula to get there. And it's not, I spend, I watch a lot of other, creators, if you will, who are similar to my view in terms of the way the world works, and in terms of our intention. When we, the most powerful thing we can do is set our intention and keep our focus on whatever it is that we want. And that attention, as we continue to see it, and we believe it into existence, essentially. And again, though, it's already there, because we couldn't dream about it if it wasn't something that already existed in a part. And again, we walk from state to state, and that's why I have no issue when people want things that others, they're embarrassed of. Like I want this, I'm embarrassed that I want it. And so I pretend I don't want it, but yet deep down I do. And so you're living in sin. Now I would say, let's explore what it is that you think you want.
Yeah.
And let's, but if we come to do the work to say, is this what I really want? Do I want to want this? And is it okay that I want this? Do I allow myself to want this? But if you do those steps, then you're meant to have it. Like if you're willing to go through all of that, and at the end of it still, hey, I want you to have it because you're meant to have it. And I don't care why. I don't care what it is. That's the beautiful part, because it's the role you're meant to play. Like you wouldn't want to do it if it wasn't meant wasn't meant for you. And if you can, so I love this stuff. Like I want people to see how powerful they are.
Yes. And I love this. Like everything is already perfect. You are already perfect. And then we get to choose what we make it mean. And I think that that's just a really beautiful, kind of full circle moment to the podcast. It's making meaning. And that is why it is called what it is because conversations like this are both how I am creating the life that I want to live, which is having conversations like these. Like the thing that makes me excited and fills me up is when I end a podcast and it's like, ooh, that was good. Like that was good. That is what that looks like to me in so many ways. But also,
and what I love, Reese, is simply that, everything we've talked about, like we've literally just scratched the surface. Like we could pick any topic we've started and literally probably do a full podcast on it, which is super, super cool. And that to me is so super valuable. And it's so great to have the opportunity to talk with you because you're like-minded. And honestly, I feel like that's you have to be you have to believe what surround yourself with people who but here's the thing, again, we always put cause and effect. Like there's nothing we're doing. Like you have to trust that you will find the people who you need for this season in your life, and be okay with the fact that they might not be forever people. But don't be surprised if I encourage everyone to try this, and it will change your life. Like I
see how it magnetizes you. It turns you into a magnet where like the poles, it will force away what is not meant to be and attract what does, and it does include people. It really does. And I think that also within all of this, the idea that it can be really lonely, but it doesn't have to be. Not being afraid to do this work in community as well. I think That's why I wanted Cohere to be a collective, right? From the very beginning. It was always, this is not my story. This is not about me. This is not my journey. It is all of us. How do we make meaning? Yes, I am, but that means you are and we are. And what does that collective look like? I just think it's so important to keep that at the forefront. And like you were saying, the we are here to be of service to other. And when we engage in that energy, that's why it's already perfect. And I think the thing that I don't think I've had one episode where helping others has not been at the heart of why someone does what they do. We are hardwired for that. There's a study that just came out recently about how babies, when they are like in rooms with each other, they laugh when they hear other babies laugh. They cry when they hear other babies cry. We are hardwired for empathy. And I just think that's so beautiful to think of the way that you recognizing your I amness, your godlike self, your truth actually deeply helps other people do the same thing and step into their reality and their truth. And it's all reciprocal. It's all reciprocal.
It is. And you know, in the book of Job, as Job prayed for his friends, he was healed himself. It's a very powerful message. You know, when what you do unto others, you know, is you reap what you sow. I mean, again, it's golden rule. These are laws. Like these are laws. They work whether you want them to work or not.
Yep.
So learn the rules. And
learn the rules.
Like read the rule book. You know, figure it. Like test it, see it, taste. Like there's never, you know, a lot of people are like, trust me. I don't want anyone to trust me. I want you to do it on your own.
Trust you.
Right. Trust you. Like test it. I mean, it either works or it doesn't. If it works, then go and do likewise. You know, and but try to just challenge yourself to do it. And there's tons of great resources out there, and you know, there's great great coaching available. There's there's so much free resources, and I encourage people to try it and see how take the meaning for themselves out of it, because the meaning we make out of things is all based on our beliefs, and you can see, you know, it's this virtuous circle, or it can be a vicious circle depending. You see what you believe by what you're feeling. Your feelings point to what your beliefs are. Your action, you know, all of these things are a circle because we respond in a certain way because of what we believe. Not we believe that this is true, so we're defending ourselves because deep down inside, I think I am bad. So when you come at me, I have to defend myself. But again, when we stop and say, what do I believe? What does this tell me? I want my boss to respect me. You know, that's what I really want. I don't feel respected at work. I feel like I'm on the edge. Like they're gonna. Okay, well, who do you want to be? Who do you see yourself as? Can you see yourself as the person who gets commended at work? Can you see and believe that I am the one who my boss? You know, just the other day, my boss brought me into the office and said how great I was doing. Can you be bold enough and daring enough and courageous enough to believe that despite evidence to the contrary? I don't know. Not everybody can, and that's okay. There's no judgment, but we all have the ability. And it's a journey, and we don't all get there. And that's okay. In the sense of it doesn't lessen who you are. That woman who had the $2 million estate that she didn't know about, it didn't make her any less because she didn't know about it and use it. She was the same I am. It's a beautiful journey, Reese, and that's I love the power of intention. I love, I want, and I think, especially, one of my particular, passions is really around empowering women to see their power, because I feel like men often, assume they're powerful because of society and all of these rules and the fact that they're bigger and stronger than most women. I mean, that's and it's just everything our society says and perpetuates. And and again, maybe it's because of my upbringing, the fact that I grew up with a single mom, and in some senses was an encourager for her. But I see such a power in having both there's just so much power in having somebody encouraging you and seeing,
Yeah.
seeing you for who you are. And that's really, to me, the power of getting a good coach or getting a good therapist, depending on, again, I think those, they're very different purposes, but ultimately it's about connection. It's about
Yeah.
finding somebody to walk alongside of you, to encourage you. And for me, my passion, my true joy is to, in particular, empower women that have been, that have felt unempowered because of society and because of life, and to get them to truly step into their power, and not believe what the lies of society, and
Right.
what, and to overcome, and to live past their experiences. And I think it's desperately needed because,
Yeah.
I mean, and I know and there's a lot of different ways to feel empowered, and I don't know. That's the life. That's the world I want to imagine, where nobody feels that they're not good enough, that nobody feels like they
Yeah.
don't belong, that nobody feels that they're broken or that they even make mistakes. I tell myself that every day. I am the presence that never fails or makes a mistake, no matter what it is. Why is that so? Why is that so awful to believe?
Yeah.
What I mean, oh, you're so prideful. No, I don't think it's me anyway. Like, I believe people will hear what they need to hear. I won't even remember what we said on this
Right.
podcast, other than it was absolutely lovely. Like, there's no scripting here. There's no any of that, and it's. But people will hear what they need to hear out of this.
Yeah.
Whatever the one thing is, and if it changes their lives, then we've fulfilled our mission. Like,
Yeah.
that's the mission. But just know that there are people out there that can help you with this, that can help
Yes.
you, walk alongside. Not going to do the work for you. That's not possible.
No.
But, you can, just the energy of having somebody lift up your arms for you when your arms get
Yeah.
tired, because the world is designed to make us exhausted.
Yeah, it
And,
is.
and, again, there's so many different areas you can explore in life, and I don't know. That's my message, though, to everyone listening,
Yeah.
is that you are a queen, you are a king, you are beautiful, and you are perfect, just the way you are. Now let's reveal who you really are, and who you're meant to be, and the glory and the splendor that, is found within you, and it's all
Yeah.
there, and it's beautiful, and it's incredible, and I just want everyone to live their life that way. And it
Yeah.
sounds so Pollyanna, and it sounds so crazy, but you know what?
It's
Let's. I assume that it's possible for some people. I
yeah.
assume that this will help, people,
Yeah.
and that it'll grow, and that's what we're all
Period.
about here. Period. So.
Truly. Um I think that's it. I'm like that is the stuff. So as we head into the ending of our conversation, I have two final questions just to wrap everything up. One, is there anything that we did not get to, that we did not touch on? Of course, lots and lots, but that you would be remiss if you didn't add, or something you want to clarify, or something you want to go back to, reemphasize, anything at all. This is just space for you.
Yeah, no, I think that, people see my heart, and the thing I would say is there, believe in your dreams, like
Yeah.
yield to the idea that you actually have what you want. Like, it's a yielding, it's not a doing, it's an allowing, it's a yielding, it's an unfolding, and it's paradoxical. That's the mystery. That's why it's so hard, because the more you want something, the more, because often we focus on lack, and we focus on the
Yeah.
fact that we don't have it. But no, we do. And the more you
You
tell
do.
yourself that, just persist in it. And if you
Yeah.
need help, find somebody who is but find carefully, because there's a lot of people who are cookie cutter. It's not a one size fits all solution. Everybody's different, and different things are going to resonate. And try anything. Just try it.
Yeah.
Try it, and do it.
Yeah. And on that, Dennis is a wonderful life coach, as well as almost in May will be certified therapist. Are you currently accepting clients, looking open, all of those good things?
I am. By the time this airs, I think I'll have my website up.
Beautiful. All
And
of that will be linked in show notes wherever you are listening or watching. If you would like to be in community with Dennis, get in contact with him or work with him about this or any number of other things. Like you said, he also does a lot of work in the neurodiversity community. He's also extremely passionate about TTRPGs, which we didn't even touch on.
We didn't even
which
touch
is something
on
that we both love, which is so funny. But yes, all of Dennis's information will be down below for anyone to find you. And my very last question, just to hopefully put a little bow on this vast and beautiful conversation, is what is one word to describe how you are feeling right now?
Honored is the word I'll go with. And in the sense of it's truly an honor just to be able to share what I love and the thing that I'm just so passionate about. And I'm honored to find community in the collective, and hopefully, we'll be doing a lot more together. So hopefully your listeners like me, because I hope to do more.
Yes.
If I can get my as I graduate and figure out. But I think that's for me is just an honor and a privilege to share my views of things with like-minded individuals and change lives. It takes one little thing. So, thank you for what you're doing.
Yes.
And I love being a part of it and can't wait to continue to grow, with us. So
it is an honor and privilege to listen and hear and hold space for all of those things, and to be able to be the platform where you are choosing to share this. So thank you so much. And I am, similarly very excited for how this continues to grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Be well. Be well, Reese.
Yes.
Talk soon.
Thank you all so very much for joining for this conversation today. And of course, a huge thank you to Dennis for his time and energy during this episode. Anytime Dennis and I connect, I feel like we could talk for hours and hours and hours about this stuff. And I'm just so thrilled to be able to share it with you. So please let me know in the comments down below what you think. Have you explored any of these concepts before? What does manifestation mean to you? How do you view your relationship to your higher power? These are all extremely important questions that we must be asking, and I think our answers to them will ever evolve, but I would love to know where you're at right now. Again, if you're interested in working with Dennis, all of his information will be in the description wherever you are listening or watching. And please follow, like, subscribe, rate, review, comment, share this episode of Making Meaning. If you are curious about more from the Cohere Collective, you can head on over to www.thecoherecollective.com to check out all of our other content and offerings. If you're interested in working with me to help find and pursue your purpose, you can also check out my personal offerings over on the website as well. A huge thank you to Nicole Oesterreicher for Making Meaning's art and podcast cover. You can find her on Instagram at Nicole O Creates and Nicole O Design. And a big thank you to Tristan Morgan for Making Meaning's theme music. You can find him on Instagram at Tristan Morgan. Links all in the description. Right now, I am feeling recommitted. I think we go through cycles with big projects and creative endeavors where things will feel like work, and then they'll feel like joy, and then they'll feel like creation. And I have just recently entered back into this huge creative phase with the Cohere Collective and all of the different offerings that we're creating. And it is just filling me up, man. It is something that is making me so excited to plant my feet on the ground when I wake up in the morning, and I'm having to stop myself from immediately pulling out my computer and getting to work and actually doing some meditation and maybe brushing my teeth before I look at a screen. But it's because I am just really like lit up from the inside with all of the new things that are coming. So please stay tuned. If you want to stay up to date, following the Cohere Collective on any social media channels is the best way. But also we have a newsletter through our website that you can sign up for that will kind of keep you up to date as well. And I'll provide some resources and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's important to be gentle with ourselves as creative people, that your process is going to evolve and change. It's good to let yourself be in different phases with projects, because as you change and your relationship to the project changes, you are allowing the project to unfold and reveal itself to you in the same way that you are revealing yourself to this work and to this project. You are just a space holder for this work to unfold, and it chose you to be that space holder, which I think is pretty cool. Hold space for your project, for your purpose. Hold space for your purpose. We're holding space for defying gravity and your purpose. And your purpose should help you defy gravity too. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Thank you all so very much for being here today. And as always, I hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.